Okay, recording.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jerry Deniston. I'm going to get started shortly here. I'll just give everybody a chance to get into the session. We've got 4 presenters for you today, and we'll get started very shortly here. Okay, we've got 11 people who've joined us. So if you would, just please put in the chat introduce yourself. Let us know a little bit about you. That'll help the presenters as well. I have someone who raised a hand, but I can't see the.
Nope, that was me.
All right. Well, why don't we just go ahead and get started? I see what I've done. This is at the end of the show, so we want to get started at the beginning. Let me just stop screen sharing for a minute here and get to the beginning. Guess we can't do this without some kind of a glitch. Again, I'm Jerry Deniston. We're here to talk about SBIR and how to leverage America's seed fund. And I am going to turn it over to Lou Farina, who's here with the SBDC, and he'll be introducing your speakers.
Good morning, everybody. Lou Farina from the SBDC. Thanks for joining us this morning. We're going to have an action-packed webinar here with a couple of different speakers, and we're going to talk about SBIRs. Let me just give you a quick introduction to what we're going to talk about today, and then to the speakers. So anybody who's done fundraising knows it's really challenging. And this program, the SBIR/STTR program, is really the nation's largest source of early stage high risk funding for startups and small businesses. So it provides, it fulfills an important niche. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. But the topics for today, I'm going to kick off the session by talking about the startup capital landscape, just to put SBIRs in a little bit of context if you're starting to raise money early. And then I'm going to turn it over to Bob, and I'll introduce Bob here in a second, and he's going to give you an overview of the SBIR program, and as well as the PTAC services. And we're going to talk about, I'm going to turn it over to Kyle, and we're going to talk about the ACA Fast Grant and the state initiatives through the ACA. I'm going to come back and talk a little bit more about the commercialization element of SBIRs, and then probably all of us will talk about the available resources, but there'll be a little bit of a recap. And then we'll turn it back over to Jerry, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about how to sign up for counseling. So we can get started.
Hey, Lou, really quickly, a couple people in the audience have let us know that the chat box is disabled. They can type in Q&A, but they can't type in chat.
Okay. I'm not sure if that's intentional, but Jerry. Okay, next slide, Jerry. Okay, so here I am, Lou Farina. For those of you who I don't know, I'm a business analyst here at the SBDC. My specialty is technology commercialization. My background is in corporate ventures. I did that on a global basis. In town here, when I left industry, I served as a strategic advisor and consultant and an active angel investor for a while. I'm also an official reviewer for the National Science Foundation for SBIRs. I've been here at the Maricopa Center almost 4 years now. And I really enjoy working with our technology ecosystem and all the interesting folks and ventures. Next slide. Also, we're going to have speaker Bob Mucci. He's on the line. Bob is a procurement specialist at the Arizona PTAC, which is the Procurement Technical and Assistance Center. He's worked for the Arizona Procurement Center located in Maricopa College. He does work. He's considered a subject matter expert in SBIRs and STTR applications, and he assists the University of Arizona, Center for Innovation and Gateway Community College, Center for Entrepreneur Innovation clients. I work with Bob. He helps folks from all over the state on SBIRs, and he is a really great resource. So we're going to be happy to hear from him. Next slide, please. And also we're going to have Kyle Homan. He works for the ACA. He is titled a Strategic Futures Analyst. His role serves as the project coordinator for small business grant programs to enhance economic growth. Kyle's role includes small business innovation research grants, SBIR, State's TTR program, to mine industrial and academic research for commercialization opportunities. The ACA, they'll tell you a little bit more about it, but they've got a very active role now with SBIRs based on a grant they've received, and which is going to continue. We're really excited to have Kyle. So next slide. Let me just tell you a little bit about the SBDC first. Bob's going to tell you a little bit more about PTAC, and Kyle is going to tell you a little bit more about ACA. But the SBDC is a service. We're part of the America's SBDC network. We're in the Maricopa Center. There's 10 centers here in Arizona, and I keep this slide. I've got to fix it. I'm sorry. On the top of the list here of things we do is disaster loan assistance. And we did a lot of that. We haven't done that. That's not our legacy, but we did a lot of it here during the pandemic, doing a lot less of it now, if any. But a lot of what we do is lender readiness for businesses that need to inject capital and go for loans. We have specialty advisors to be able to help with loan preparedness. We've got all kinds of different advisors with different skill sets. We can do financial review and resiliency and assessment on your business. We've got marketing folks. We can help you buy and sell. We've got manufacturing expertise, technology commercialization. We've got a specialist in international trade or export, and then government contracting, which is really handled by our PTAC group, and Bob will tell you more about that. 3 things that we primarily do at the SBDC is one-on-one counseling, and all of this is no fee. So you get paired up with a counselor, and if you're doing technology work, you're probably going to get paired up with me. We do training. This webinar is training. We do all kinds of other webinars. We've done in the past. We've done workshops. We're virtual now, but hopefully we'll go back to do workshops. Check our calendar. There's plenty of different. There's different webinars that are scheduled here at the end of the year. It's gonna probably November, December we're a little bit light, but once the first of the year, we'll start back up again. And then we've got resources, including things like a Live Plan, which is a business planning software, and market research reports through iBiz, and the other one is Vertical IQ, as well as other tools. And these are tools that are commercial tools, third-party tools. But if you utilize our service, we can provide them at no cost. So it's a really nice thing for us to be able to do for our clients. There's our website down here, and you can learn more about the SBDC. So next slide. So let me just kick off here and talk about startup capital, right? And generally, raising funding for a small business is really hard, and I mentioned that before. And there are generally 2 ways, but we're going to talk. This is to talk about a 3rd way. But in general, it's either going to be an equity transaction or a debt transaction. Equity is you're going to have ownership. You're going to give away ownership, and for an investment. Debt, you're going to sign a promissory note to be able to pay a debt back. Usually it's secured with some kind of collateral, and there's an interest rate, and you're going to go through a commercial lender. So you really have 2 options for it. And then there are grants. And I purposely didn't include grants here because it's really hard, very difficult to start up your business based on grants alone, right? Grants can be a supplement. It can get you started. And in general, the SBIRs are probably, when you talk about starting a business, in technology business especially, the Sbr program is the primary grant that would be available to you. So next slide. Again, the first startup capital is the trickiest, the most difficult. I can't emphasize this enough. There's really stiff competition for limited sources of financing. Very, very competitive. Now, we all hear the stories about about entrepreneurs who walk into a coffee shop and throw a slide at somebody they meet at the coffee shop and get funded for $9 million and walk away. But that generally isn't the experience that most of us have. If you're a serial entrepreneur and you've done this, you've had a successful exit or two, you built companies, you exited, and you have a close network of viable investors, they're a lot easier to fund. But those of us who are doing this for the first time, and the most of us are doing this for the first time, it's very, very challenging. Next slide. So I'm just going to mention startup debt, right? There are some loans for startup small businesses, but you got to realize, relative to investors, lenders are very risk averse. It's difficult to get bank loans for companies that don't have a financial record. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. And so most, when we evaluate a lot of our early stage companies, most aren't what we call bankable. And it's not because they're bad businesses, it's just because they're a little bit early. Decision factors that come in for startup debt, do you have experience? Do you have a cash down payment, experience in the domain? How mature is your product? Do you have what's your personal credit? Is there collateral, personal collateral? How good is your plan? What is the industry sector appetite of the lender at that particular time? I had a client who looked to be bankable, but he went to a lender and said, yeah, this looks good, but we just don't want any tech right now. And that just happens. It's a portfolio decision. So next slide, please. So, hey, Jerry, you can click all the way through this. There's some animation here I should have took out. There you go. Thank you very much. Oh, there you go. So there's kind of a sequence to equity investment. And this isn't hard and fast, but I'm going to give you a general overview. So usually in the idea stage, you've got to self-fund. And, we always ask, who's the first person into your venture? It's yourself. And who's the second person into your venture? And we always joke, it's yourself. So you gotta put some money in. You got to put some money that's relative to your means into the business to make it, to make others want to follow you. And then there's this pre-seed, we call pre-seed round, it's seed, but there's a friends and family round. These are people that know and love you. There's some public sources. There's like the AIC Innovation Challenge. There's crowdfunding early. There might be some accelerators. Accelerator is a kind of an incubator environment that will take a stake in your company to try to move your company ahead. And they might inject some cash into it also. Then there are these grants, these SBIRs, and they're early. And the reason they really are very important is because there aren't many investors that are willing to do seed or pre-seed this early in a significant commitment. And this is kind of where it fills that void, which is, again, really important. But after you've gone through yourself and your friends and family, and you've raised some early capital, you've got some traction, then you can kind of talk to angel investors. Angel investors don't seed generally, they don't come in as early as you'd like them to. And after angel investors, and I'll say strategic investors, who are a little bit different from a liquidity perspective, then you may get to corporate ventures or venture capital, and then there's IPO, private equity after that. Most of us don't get there. As a matter of fact, most clients that I work with never get to venture capital or need venture capital or even corporate venture. So they rely on those other early stages. So that's kind of where the SBIRs fit in the progression of equity investments. Next slide, please. And I just want to just talk a little bit about why investors like SBIRs. So it's an early capital injection, right? And it's non-dilutive. So there's no ownership taken by the government. So what we're able to do is de-risk the technology early with this capital injection without anybody taking ownership, which is really kind of a nice thing from an investor, right? And there's a certain level of validation for an SBIR. There'll be a scientific committee that's going to vet your technology. There's also going to be a commercialization element that's going to be vetted by a team of outside experts. And so there's a certain level of validation that de-risks the investment. But on the other hand, I'll just say, simply receiving an SBIR grant, whether it's a phase 1 or a phase 2, does not necessarily mean the company is going to be a great investment and it's going to attract investment. It's a nice thing for investors to see, but it is not a prerequisite for investment, and it doesn't guarantee you private investment. But again, it's a good thing. So next slide, please. Okay, Bob, I'm going to turn this over to you. Here's Bob Mucci from PTAC. He's going to give you an overview of the program.
All right. Thanks, Lou. Gary, let's go to the next slide. A couple of quick things. I'm going to give you a 50,000 view, high-level view of SBIRs. Because SBIRs are really very complicated, and all of these agencies really differ. So, I'm going to sort of give you an overview more than anything. The other thing, too, that you need to know is that SBIRs, like Lou said, are non-dilutive. And there's a lot of resources that are out there, and we'll cover them a little bit later on. But a good place to start is at, the SBA's SBIR site, which is, listed here on the screen. If you're interested in doing an SBIR and an STTR, this is where I would start off so that you can kind of get a flavor for how this program works. Terry, go ahead and go to the next slide. And go ahead and click through, because this is, there you go. And keep going. So there's a little bit of difference. Go back to that slide. There's a little bit of difference between SBIRs and STTRs. SBIRs are small business innovator research grants or contracts. The purpose is to stimulate technology and innovation by investing in research and development, and they may or may not require a business to be involved with an institution or higher education. A lot of SBIRs are pretty much agency specific, and we'll talk about those in a second. Now, the difference between SBIRs and STTRs is STTRs are small business technology transfer. These awards are made to businesses that pursue technology innovation, and you have to have a cooperative agreement between a research institution, a nonprofit, or an educational institution. You are required to do that. And there's a lot of requirements that are involved with STTRs in the nature of who does what work. Gary, next slide, please. Now, the other thing that I want to tell you, and again, I'm giving you the high-level overview, is that SBIRs and STTRs can either be topic-specific or open topic. Now, by topic-specific, I mean that, an agency will specifically look for an applicant to deal with a question that they have. And I jokingly say, if, you're, applying for a Department of Defense, SBIR, they may say, okay, look, we want to solve the problem of how to put an artillery round on the head of a pin at 1,000 miles away. That's topic specific. There are agencies that have open topics. The Air Force has a program called Air Force Works. We'll talk about that in a second. And the National Science Foundation has very broad topic categories where you can, apply under their topic category. Solicitations are usually listed on sam.gov or grants.gov. sam.gov is the database basically where all solicitations are issued, and they have to be put on there as being open. Now, the Department of Defense has what they call broad agency announcement, BAAs, and they can be on sam.gov or on the DoD DSIP portal. And you should check on both of these, because sometimes I've seen DoD SBIRs on SAM.gov and not listed on the DSIP portal. Open topics can be on grants.gov, DSIP, or on SAM. So you see, there's a lot of variation here on where the agencies will list their SBIR solicitations. And the word solicitation is really important because SBIRs come out in solicitations. They're basically soliciting, the public to apply for SBIR or an STTR. Next slide, Jerry.
Bob, we have one question.
Sure.
Just a question. Kyle, would you answer this question? Oh, he's going to answer it live. Is it true that SAM.gov is not using the DUNS anymore? That's a question that's just
yes,
come up.
I can answer that.
Okay.
And I can talk a little bit more about SAM.gov. SAM.gov switched over from DUNS to what they call a unique entity identification number in April. And so the DUNS number is no longer used, and it's no longer used in applying for SBIRs or STTRs. The other thing too that I'll just say is that SAM.gov is a total mess right now. Do not apply to SAM.gov and think that you're going to get, listed there in a day. The average time now is 14 days, and it can take up to 3 weeks to get listed on SAM.gov. One other thing too, I'm going to kind of dial back a bit. What we do at PTAC is we offer services to people, again, at no charge, and we will help you get registered on SAM.gov once you become a PTAC client. Okay, so no more DUNS number. DUNS is done. Okay, and I probably should have changed the slide in here, but I haven't done that yet. Now, the other thing I'm going to tell you is there's a virtual cornucopia of agencies that offer SBIRs and STTRs, and I've listed those here. The big, elephant in the room is the Department of Defense. They have the biggest SBIR budget, and they offer the most opportunity for SBIRs. But again, only if you, have an SBIR that is for a topic that they're looking for. The other two agencies that offer the most amount of money for SBIRs are the National Science Foundation and the National Institute of Health. All the other agencies that I've listed here do offer SBIRs, but they kind of descend in the amount of money that they offer depending upon the size of the agency. And like I said below, requests for SBIR applications can be problem or topic specific or broad in nature, and it depends on the agency and their requirements. Okay, next slide, Carrie. This is the National Science Foundation topic areas. These are their very, very broad topic areas. And underneath each topic area are specific, program topic areas. So if you're looking at the National Science Foundation, you should do a drill down. And if you think that you have something that's going to be a medical device, you would click on that and you would see, the program areas that are underneath medical devices. So again, National Science Foundation has very, very broad topic areas. Okay, next slide, Jerry. Air Force Works is another area that has very, very broad topic areas. They basically have open topic. And what they do is they have a process where you go ahead. Oh, the other thing too is that with National Science Foundation, you do a project pitch to them. You submit a project pitch, and then they're going to either approve it or not approve it. And if they approve it, then you're eligible to go in to submit a complete solicitation. Air Force Works also has a project pitch. And what you do there is you submit a project pitch, kind of tell them what you want to do, and they're either going to accept you into phase one, or they're going to say, no, that's not what we're really interested in. So these are two of the areas that have, two of the government entities that have really open topic. With Air Force Works, they're basically saying, show us what you got. We may be interested. We don't know, and I think that that's really a good place for individuals to take a look at applying. for SBIRs. Next slide area, Jerry. Okay, how to apply. There are a lot of ways to apply for SBIRs. Many agencies use grants.gov as an application portal, and that's just the portal that you go to begin your application. There are specific forms that you need to fill out, and there's a specific application process that you have to go through. The Department of Defense has an application portal on their DSIP website. And again, it's a very specific way that you need to fill out your application. Now, FastLane is no longer there anymore. That was principally used by the National Science Foundation, and they've converted over now to a different application portal. It's an entirely new application portal, and I haven't put it up here yet, but I will. So when you apply, you've got to understand that, you know, the agency that you're applying to uses different application portals, and none of them are similar. You know, you would think the government would make it easy, but they don't. And one of the things that we do, one of the things I do as a PTAC counselor, is I help you get through these application portals and understand how to apply. Okay. Next slide, Jerry. Do not think that you're going to apply for an SBIR and take a week or a couple of days to do it. This is a very time-consuming process, and there's a lot of detail that is involved into going into applying for an SBIR or an STTR. I've seen estimates that say the average time to draft a proposal and submit it is between 200 and 300 hours. You're going to spend a lot of time applying, you know, to these programs, and there's a lot of detail that's involved in applying. Okay. Next slide, Gary. And this is a warning. Due dates are closer than they appear. I mean, it's real important that you read the solicitation and find out and understand when your due date is. I've had clients that have applied for SBIRs and submitted their total application, you know, literally minutes before the due dates close. And I'm going to be honest, they make me crazy. You know, you've got to, you know, understand when your due date is. And I always tell a client, submit your application at least a week, if not 4 days before the due date. Because if there is a problem with your application, you usually will find out what that problem is and you can go in and correct it. But if it's like minutes before your application is due, you can't correct, you know, a problem. You know, your application is done. And if the problem is such that, you know, it throws you out of the application process, you know, you're finished. So make sure you understand when your due date is, okay? And that's in the solicitation. Next slide, Carrie. Oh, okie don't know why there's a blank slide here. Oh, there we go. So I always tell clients right at the very beginning, read the solicitation. And then when you're done, read the solicitation again. And then when you're done a third time, read the solicitation and print it, because you know the devil is in the details. And you don't want to miss, you know, something that's really important because, you know, you haven't read the solicitation, you know, totally and completely. Next slide. You got to understand what SBIRs and STTRs are. This is a competition. There are literally thousands of applicants, and there's a peer review that's involved in, you know, looking at your application. You may have a great idea, but then again, so does every other applicant. I mean, it's real important that you understand, you know, that you may have a great idea, but if you write a really poor application, it's not going to get a favorable review. And really, you are, you know, competing against thousands of applicants. The last Air Force Works application process that we looked at, that I helped a client go through, there were 1,700 applicants, and I think about 100 of those applicants got phase one funding. Okay, so understand, you know, that you're in competition here. Next slide, Gary. Okay, a couple of things that you need to understand about SBIRs and STTRs. There are really three phases. Phase one is your proof of concept, POC. You know, you need to have something that is innovative, not evolutionary. And in other words, you can't be applying to change something that you've already developed. You need to be, you know, innovative, and it needs to be significantly different than what may already exist. Specifically with the National Science Foundation, you have to have a high degree of risk or failure because you are pushing beyond present technology. You're working on a whole new product, technology, or process. And when you get a phase one award, should you be lucky enough, you have a short time frame to prove your concept. Anywhere it's from 6 months to a year at tops. Now, things that are not acceptable are system studies, market research, commercial development of existing products or concepts, or evolution of existing products or applications, okay? Phase one is proving your concept. Okay, next slide, Jerry. Okay, now what? So you get your phase one and you think, oh, great. Well, like I say, holy guacamole, I think this works. What do I do next? Guess what? You need to apply again. Just because you got a phase one doesn't mean that you're going to get a phase two. Phase two funding is for the grantee to take the proof of concept and then work on making it commercially available. Commercially available is really very, very important. And how do you build or manufacture your magic nuclear blaster decoder ring that can make ice and brew coffee? Well, that's what, you know, you want to tell them how you're going to, get your proof of concept and make it commercially viable. And there's a lot more money in phase two. Usually phase ones start off at anywhere from $150,000 as an award to up to $750,000 for award. Phase twos usually are, about 1.5 million, maybe 1.75 million. So you get a lot more for a phase two award. But again, you have to apply for it. And I always tell clients, if you get a phase one, start thinking about your phase two application the day that you get your phase one award. Okay. Next slide, Gary. There is a lot of online tutorials, and you really should spend time on these, going through these tutorials. The Department of Energy has an excellent tutorial program, and there are also a lot of good tutorials at sbir.gov/tutorials. Every single agency usually has a good set of tutorials for you to go through. I mean, there's agency overviews, there's program, basics, there's tutorial on data rights, there's tutorials on IP protection. And the Department of Energy actually has a company that assists first-time applicants, so you can apply to them to get, their assistance. But I really recommend that prior to you actually starting on an application, you go through an online tutorial for whatever agency you're applying for. Next slide, Carrie. Resources. SBIR.gov. Your SBDC advisor, Lou. I work very closely with Lou, particularly in helping businesses with their commercialization portion of their application. I can assist you. Arizona Commerce Authority can assist you. Consultants. there are some really very, very good consultants here in Arizona who do SBIR work. You pay for them, but one of the things you have to understand when you're doing an SBIR is, again, you're competing. You're competing against people who either have people who have done SBIRs as part of their company, or they're paying consultants to do, the work, for them. You have to work with your consultant. You can't just say, here's an SBIR, go apply for me. But there are good consultants that are out there. Universities have resources. Arizona State, University of Arizona, and Grand Canyon have resources. The other thing that you can do is you can always reach out to SBIR and STTR winners. And oftentimes they're willing to share with you how they went about applying and getting awarded an SBIR award. So there are a lot of good resources in the state. Next slide, Gary. This would be when we start off, with Kyle. But before we do that, I want to just ask if there are any questions or comments that you may have. Again, what I've done is I've done the very, very high level overview of the SBIR STTR program. Nothing? I kind of zipped through this, and just so that you all know, one of the things that I'm probably going to be doing, when 2023 starts, is I'll be doing some individual trainings on some individual agencies and how to apply to those individual agencies. Each one of those trainings is usually about a minimum of an hour, usually an hour and a half long. So I guess that's it. There are no questions.
No, I think we're good to go. If you want to just turn off your camera, and we'll go on to Kyle.
All righty. There we go.
Cool. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Jerry. I am now up. Like Lou said in the introduction, I work with the Arizona Commerce Authority. My focus is primarily on the SBIR and STTR programs. So I'll be talking a little bit more about those today and how the ACA can serve as a resource for companies that are going through the process of applying. Next slide, please. Cool. Okay, so that's my title slide. So you can just go ahead and head over to the next one. Cool. So the SBIR program, as well as the FAST program, that is another program that I'm going to be talking about today. If you want to go to the next slide. Bob and Luke kind of touched on this, but the SBIR program is essentially a program that helps small businesses commercialize their nascent technology, like like Bob said in particular, early stage development, proof of concept. It's not an evolution of an existing concept or existing application. It's new, and the primary focus is on the innovative component of it to commercialize those nascent technologies. You can go ahead to the next slide. So some key aspects of the SBIR program. It's non-dilutive capital, which means that the government does not take a stake in your company. You maintain full equity through the process, which makes you very appealing to investors after the fact, especially when it comes with that sort of vetted technology component, sort of that stamp or seal of approval from a federal agency. So if you receive an SBIR, you get sort of that stamp of approval that the government sort of vetted your technology while still maintaining total control of your own equity, as well as also having your IP and data rights protected. And then another interesting piece, which Bob can certainly help successful SBIR applicants with after they receive their funding, is the direct follow-on to Phase 3 awards. If you're an SBIR recipient, you're considered able to apply for sole source contracts without having to go out for bids, because that SBIR application that you went through initially, that is considered that competitive process. Once you receive the SBIR award, that's when that direct follow-on Phase 3 awards is applicable and you don't need to go out for those bids. So that's another key aspect of the funding that makes SBIR sort of unique or special for those who receive it and those who are looking sort of at your credentials after you receive it for follow-on funding from investors. And go ahead and go to the next slide.
We just got one question that I missed. Maybe you can address this, or Bob, but how close to the solicitation topic does an application need to be? Is there much flexibility, or is it rigid for the individual agencies?
Yeah, I can speak to that, and I'm sure Bob would echo. You know, going back to his read the solicitation. There are certain key words that you can pick out in each solicitation. And if your application doesn't kind of speak to those keywords, or those keywords aren't found in your application, you kind of have an uphill battle. But what I recommend, regardless of if you have any serious questions about is this eligible, is this applicable, is still regardless, reach out to the program manager who oversees that solicitation. You should be doing that no matter what. Like I said, even with or without those heavy questions, reach out to them at the start and let them know, hey, this is where I'm thinking of going. Do you have any feedback? Do you think this is, sort of what you're looking for? Do you have any thoughts? The program managers who oversee the solicitation topics, they're kind of the experts of what that agency is looking to fund. So if you reach out to them and you can have that conversation, then you can kind of feel confident up front that you're not going to waste all your time submitting an application that is not in the ballpark of what that funding agency is looking for. So how close does the solicitation topic need to be to an application? Well, obviously, and like Bob said as well, there is the open topics, and then the more heavy, the solicitations with a specific ask. With the ones that are those solicitations that aren't open topics, the application would need to be fairly close to what is being asked. But obviously, if you have maybe a unique take on it that might answer the question in a way that you don't necessarily think the solicitation is going in that direction, but you still think it's within that's when you reach out to the program manager and get that clarity from them.
And Kyle, the other thing too is that, in my experience, if it's a specific topic area, they really want you to answer that specific topic. But, much like you just said, I would reach out to the program manager, because you may have something that's not specific to that topic, but in talking to the program manager, they may say, I think maybe this might be something that we would want to list in our very next solicitation.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Kyle, I'd like to add, just, with the SBIR program being reauthorized, there is a directive now, and it's going to take a little bit to be implemented, that every agency is going to have open topic at least once a year.
Yeah, I forgot
so
to mention
that's
that.
a change. So it's a good change.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Lou. As far as eligibility requirements, they're actually pretty lax. So when SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research Technology, the focus is on small businesses. How does the program define what small business is? Under 500 employees. That's pretty much the only size restriction involved as far as eligibility for a small business. So if you're under 500 employees, then you can apply to this program, provided that the work is done in the U.S. You're a U.S.-based company, and obviously that the focus is on performing that R&D component, not to commercialize, not purchase capital, equipment, etc. But yeah, those are pretty much the eligibility requirements. You can go ahead to the next slide. Cool. So now we get to the topic of the FAST program, which is different than the SBIR program. So the FAST program, or Federal State Technology Partnership Program, is designed to support small businesses go through the SBIR process. So the ACA, the Arizona Commerce Authority, is a recipient of the SBA's FAST grant. And what the FAST grant does for us is it allows us to conduct outreach technical assistance and provide some financial support to companies going through that application process. Outreach would be sort of like this, having these webinars and programming and getting the word out. Technical assistance is workshops and functions like that to help people prepare for the application. We've done webinars in the past where we have program managers come in and speak to their individual agency, or we've done how to submit to the NSF, how to write a pitch. We've done workshops like that, as well as the financial support that comes in the form of part of the Fast Grant funding allows us to provide $3,000 micro grants to small businesses that are interested in applying to the Sbir program. That can be found on the ACA's website and the Sbir Resource Center page. That application for that $3,000 grant is currently open through the end of December. We can only fund 6 at a time, and we do 3 rounds throughout the year. But that is sort of for companies. You submit the application, and it's fairly simple to fill out. We're really just trying to gauge your knowledge and understanding of the Sbr program and sort of the viability of your technology. One of the main questions we ask when we review those applications to receive those $3,000 grants is this a legitimate Sbir application? Does this have the potential to be commercialized in a successful way and receive that Sbir award? And then from there, that $3,000 can be used really in any sort of capacity that would go to a company, sort of increasing their chances of receiving an Sbir application, whether it's hiring a consultant or a grant writer, or joining an incubator, or hiring an IP expert, any sort of thing that can help with that sort of at least set yourself up for a successful application. There's very broad uses of that funding, so long as it is to that effort. So that's the financial component of the FAST program that we're happy to offer. And I know that Bob and Lou both have had clients that have submitted to that and been successful. It's definitely a really solid program that I would encourage everyone to apply to if they're serious about going through that process and submitting an Sbir. You can go over to the next slide.
There was a question here. Can we send FAST a rejected Sbir for evaluation?
So FAST is a program, but if you're saying, can you send us a rejected application for review? We don't do that. I do know that Lou reviews Sbirs. And would definitely be able to assist if you have any questions related to Sbir application reviews, if that answers the question.
I'll just chime in a little bit. So yeah, I can do that, and I think Bob can do that also.
Yes, I can do it too.
Yeah, a lot of times, this Sbir application process is iterative, so you learn. You may get rejected on your first submission, and the comments are kind of critical that come back, and sometimes you need somebody who's reviewed these to kind of read the tea leaves for you and help you with the next submission. So we're happy to do that. Bob, yeah.
Yeah, I would do the same thing too. Once you become a client of PTAC, I'm happy to review, applications either prior to submission or after you get a rejection or a denial from whatever agency you applied to.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you both. You can go to the next slide. Yeah. So, and like you see, the ACA's won the Sba Fast Grant. That program is for a year. We just finished our first year. There's an opportunity for an option year 2 and an option year 3. We just found out that we were renewed for that option year 2. So that just started this month in October. So October through September, and then September of 23, hopefully we will be renewed for option year 3. But we currently have that option year 2, so that it allows us to continue the year 2 of those $3,000 FAST grants. So like I said, year 2, round 1 is now open. Cool. And so that is a QR code to our Sbir Resource Center on the ACA's websites. If you don't have that QR code, you can just go to the ACA's websites and go over to the Programs tab, and then go down until you find the Sbir Sttr page. On that page, you have links to helpful resources. We have consultants listed and other organizations that can serve as a resource to companies going through the SBIR process. We have the program and grant overviews, the eligibility requirements, the Sba Fast Grant application, which I've spoke to. That's the $3,000 grant, as well as a page that has upcoming webinars and workshops, as well as we record the ones that we do. And so there's also a repository of past workshops and webinars that you can access the links. Like I said, we've done stuff with the different agencies. We've had, an NSF program manager come and speak, a DOE program manager come and speak, USDA. We've done stuff with DOD and, how to write an NSF proposal. So if any of you can kind of go through the catalog, and if there's one that particularly is of relevance to you, even though we've done it in the past, you can still view it today. So that's the videos are posted there as well. There's a form you can fill out with any specific questions you have, and myself or a colleague that works on SBIR can get in touch with you and answer those questions. Really, it's a great page with a lot of different resources and different resources available to companies that are interested in SBIR. I can go ahead and go to the next slide. So tools and equipment, I want to speak about the Arizona Core Facilities Network. It's a really interesting program that not a lot of people know about or access. At each of the three major universities in Arizona, they have what is called the Core Facilities Network, which is advanced manufacturing equipment, heavy machinery, clean room space, dry labs, wet labs, etc. And so sort of the idea behind it is if you're a small business that's trying to commercialize your technology, you're going to need access to certain pieces of equipment that you might not have the capacity on your own to go out and buy, a $3 million electron microscope or what have you. So this allows you to access these pieces of equipment at each of the different universities. Not every university has the same piece of equipment. You can go to the Core Facilities website and look to see what you may need. The reason why I include it in here is at certain select facilities, if you're an SBIR recipient, you can access the Core Facilities Network, certain facilities at nonprofit rates. So it's a little bit of a discount to companies that are interested in accessing those pieces of equipment or lab space. And so it's a great program that SBIR applicants and awardees have utilized in the past, and specifically just sort of to help with that prototyping, especially in the phase 2 stage in the manufacturing equipment. A lot of recipients have taken advantage of. So I wanted to include the Core Facilities Network, give it a shout out here with the time that it does have to SBIR and those successful applicants. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So some additional resources. That SBIR.gov has some great resources. You can learn about the program, look for tutorials, guides, resources, etc. But there's also a page on the SBIR homepage where you can go through and you can browse all open solicitations from all agencies. Each agency has their own individual solicitation page hosted on their own website. SBIR.gov gives you the opportunity to kind of go through and look at not only the open ones, but also the past ones, the ones that have been closed. So you can go through those and look at those, and you can also see, what has someone in the past done to be successful, and you can review those solicitations as well. There's a couple just agency links. Like I said, there's like 12 or 15 or however many agencies do SBIR, and then over 30 whatever sub agencies. Like NIH has several, different research centers, dozens of those all under the NIH umbrella that do SBIRs, but those are just a handful of some SBIR specific resources of different agencies, DOE, EPA, NSF, etc. But you can always go to the individual's website if you know the agency that you're interested in as well. I think that is pretty much my slides. If you want to go to one more, I think that's it. Yep, that's it. Any other additional questions?
Not seeing any additional questions.
Okay, cool. Well, I think I'm now kicking it back over to you, Lou.
I think so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yes.
Oh, here I am. All right. Thank you, Kyle. Terrific. Hey, so this is our last topic. And then we're going to start to get into just a little bit of content. And we're going to talk about the commercialization element of the SBIR. Next slide, please. So there is a commercialization element to these SBIRs, and there's a spectrum, right? You have NSF, which is fairly broad in topic, but they don't procure anything, so they're looking for I'm going to say a commercialization strategy to help them understand how you're going to bring this product and or service to market as a business. And then on the other side, you've got the DoD, right? Maybe in the other extreme, where they're actually going to procure your product as part of the phase 3. You hear phase 3 as a term, which is really a procurement contract. But then there are sometimes elements of commercialization in there also. So we'll talk about commercialization. It's important. What I want to emphasize is the big difference between an SBIR grant and a R&D grant from these agencies is commercialization, right? This is an opportunity for them to seed technology that's going to be commercialized. And so you have to they're forcing you to start to think about it as a business, as opposed to pure discovery. So that's really the big critical difference. And you can't miss the commercialization piece. So anyway, let's see on this slide. Okay, yeah, they're called different things and they're different requirements, but there's some common themes. Next slide, please. So I just want to talk a little bit about dual purpose here ventures. So let's say the Department of Defense or NASA may have a solicitation, but there may be an element of dual purpose, and dual purpose means, yeah, tell me how you're going to sell this, not only to me, but what is the commercial viability in the commercial market outside of defense applications, right? So, and what does that do? Why do they do that, and why is that important? So there's, DoD will they're looking to spread the cost burdens over the entire enterprise, right? So if something has commercial applicability, it may attract more private capital. You may be able to spread the overhead costs. There may be some lower unit pricing due to volume and supply chain efficiency. So there's a lot of efficiencies for dual purpose. And so, I've seen DoD and NASA proposals where the program manager wants to see more dual purpose than others, but it's an important element to be able to describe as you write your proposal. Next slide. So let's talk about a little bit about what a commercialization plan actually is. So it gauges economic potential. And what does that mean? Well, it's how much impact, not only can it be commercialized, but how much economic impact is it going to provide? If in your commercialization plan, you talk about investing, the government's money, the tune of a couple $1 million, and then another $4 million in private capital. And then you've got, you come out with a business that's a nice business, but you're doing about $2 million a year. Well, that's not a lot of economic impact, right? That's not a lot of sales tax. That's not a lot of jobs. That's not a lot of impact to the economy. So they're kind of looking for things that have significant impact to the economy. This is an opportunity for you to describe your strategy that your organization is going to employ to use to generate revenue. Right. So a lot of times if you're doing research contracts, you really don't worry about generating revenue. And so now you have to put a business model into place and understand, who you're going to sell to and how you're going to generate revenue. It is a roadmap for profitability of your innovation, right? Not only revenue, but how am I going to make this profitable? Because it cannot sustain itself. A business does not sustain itself unless it's profitable. And it's really the genesis of a business plan. As you get into a phase 2, it starts to look more like a business plan. It starts to look a little more like an investor pitch. There's a lot of material that you can reuse if you start the SBIR route, that you can start to weave into your investor engagement materials. So next slide, please. Why is it important? I think we've probably talked about some of this. It's geared towards economic impact, creating a business. It's really, it shifts the paradigm of research-oriented applicants. And this is not a knock on researchers, but there are, a lot of who I work with are spin-outs from universities, okay? And they're professors, academics who've got some really good ideas and are incentivized to maybe commercialize some of their ideas, either through the organization, through the school, or maybe outside of the school. They don't necessarily have the business training or have started a business, and so they need a lot of assistance in I wouldn't say shifting their paradigm, but I do say shifting their paradigm. It's in addition, it adds another level of thought parallel to the technology development. And so that's where they need a lot of help, and where there's a lot of help available for them. And then there's a significant weight in application scoring, especially for NSF. You gotta, they're pretty prescriptive, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what they're looking for. But you gotta hit what they're asking, deliver what they're asking with regard to the commercialization plan. So next slide, please. So some of the themes, I'm going to just run through some themes, some things that when I look at a commercialization plan, what do I look for, and what can be what are important. So language, there's a startup lingo, and this comes from Wiki for Starter-uppers. There's this thing called discovery. We'll talk more about that. There's traction. There's scalability, a business model, freemium, A/B tests from a marketing perspective. So there's all this verbiage, and you can describe a commercialization without using this verbiage, but it's good to have somebody who understands this verbiage as a reviewer and can insert this verbiage for you, because it makes you appear to have a little bit more, maybe entrepreneurial education. Next slide, please. Discovery and validation. I mentioned discovery in the last slide. We call this thing product market fit. How do you think that this is going to solve a problem and a customer is going to buy this? We could call it market research. It's a little bit beyond market research. We call it discovery. And discovery is this process of interviewing and getting out and talking to people outside of your home institution. If you're an academic institution, you don't really want to talk to other academics inside. You want to get outside of the building. We call it outside the building. Who are you going to talk to? Who have you talked to? What's your process? Now, you don't have to have the answer, but you have to be able to provide the reviewer some confidence that you've gone through a process of discovery that's leading you towards a validated solution. Next slide, please. Have a team of advisors. Okay, so there's a lot of power in having a board of advisors. It doesn't have to be formal. And I would say early on, you don't need a formal board of advisors, which means, any kind of equity agreement, but you can loosely, if you've talked to people outside and they're helping you, you can list them as an advisor. And if, when you list your team and you list, your core team, and usually when you're an SBIR, it's a small team, maybe it's 1 or 2 people, they don't have all the skills, but if you can, delineate that you've actually gone out and formed this board of advisors to provide you with some perspective in areas that you don't necessarily have the skills in at this point, it's very powerful, and it bodes very well when reviewers are evaluating your proposal. Next slide. Again, and this, I borrowed this from Steve Blank. If anybody ever done seen any of his work, but this is, the revenue model and financial projections. Financial projections aren't really required for a lot of, some of them, phase 2s mostly, but revenue model, business model is important. Who are you, how are you going to exchange value? Why? How does the company make money? Simple from a business perspective, but you know, when you start to think about some of these technology developments, you know, sometimes the business model is not obvious and you've got to really think through it. So next slide. And this is a fairly straightforward one, but it's important, you know, measuring market size. I talked about economic impact, economic opportunity. Well, usually you can create a lot of economic impact in revenue if you're playing in a market that's a good size. So you need to describe the market size. This is where validated third-party market research comes in to describe market sizes. So you say my TAM or my market size is X, and here's my source. And I'll just another plug for the SBDC through some more market research services. We're able to fulfill this requirement for help our clients fulfill this requirement through the services that we have to be able to obtain validated market sizes. So that's it's an important element. It's got to be in the commercialization sections. Next slide, please. Know your competition. Worst thing you can do is say there's no competition. There may be no direct competition. You may be the first person on the planet doing what you're doing, but there's always competition. There's always other ways of solving that problem. So describe it. Or if, you know, if there are people that are companies that you know of that are doing something similar, describe it. Competition actually is not a bad thing to a certain extent. Competition can validate a space. You know, if a space is important and there are folks, there are ventures that are attacking that space, it validates that space to a certain extent. And then, you know, competition is, you know, their business plan. And as you start to get further down the line with investment, you have to talk about how you're going to be better than your competition or first or whatever your differentiator is. But you have to mention your competition. No competition. If you say that, red flag. Next slide, please. Also talk about follow-on equity funding. Okay, so I will tell you that the government, the SBIR program agencies do not want to hear that you're going to solely fund your business on government money, because that's not the purpose. The purpose is to get it seeded, to get it started, then to attract some private capital to bring this into, you know, to commercialize this, to bring it into the commercial market. So knowing that you're going to need to private investment is important. Saying that is important. You may not know how much, but the sequence, who you're going to go to, angel investors, venture capitalists, etc., what that landscape may look like in your area. Who are the angel investor groups? Can you go right to venture capitalists? You may not. That may not be. You don't generally don't jump from SBIR to VC, right? They're usually way down the line, so you kind of want to refrain from saying that. But it may be that you've got a big enough venture that you're going to need venture capital at some time, and if you can describe that sequence of investing in a paragraph or two, it's important. You don't have to have this nailed, but you have to be able to communicate this. Next slide. Okay, so in a real quick, phase one commercialization plans on the left are some of the agencies, some of the section names and the lengths. NSF commercialization, called the commercial opportunity. It's 2 to 4 pages. That's probably the most, for phase one, it's probably the most detailed, but there's some others. DOD's got a commercialization strategy. DOE does too. So there are others. Next slide. Sorry about that. In a phase two commercialization plan, I'll give you an example. This, you know, for NSF, which is what I'm most familiar with, that commercialization plan cannot exceed 15 pages, excluding letters of support. So a 15-page write-up on a commercialization plan is kind of a mini business plan. It's actually a solid business plan if you do it right. They're going to have to describe the market opportunity, the company, the team, the product, technology, competition from a customer perspective. And then you're going to have to get into financial and revenue models, pro formas, next for 5 years. I think 2 years for the phase two effort and 3 years post phase two. So a pro forma is, you know, maybe your P&L for 2 years, your P&L you know, if you have a phase 2, is going to be the phase 2. Really, maybe there may not be a lot of revenue or other things happening at that time, but you got to at least project out your first 3 years of commercialization. So this is important. This is all reusable for any investor material, engagement material that you're going to be able to, that you're going to need going forward. So it's certainly not wasted time. Next slide. Okay, so I'm not, you know, available resources. I think Bob's done a good job. I think Kyle's got a good job. We've got the sbr.gov. Next slide. We've got, yeah, we've seen this slide before. Next slide, please. Again, I think we've seen this slide, but I just want to, you know, I'm sorry, go. I just want to just highlight, you know, as advisors, you know, we're no fee. I'm, as an SBDC advisor, I'm a no fee advisor, but I can help you get started. You know, I know Bob can help you get started, but you know, with us, you're going to have to write it. We do a lot of the review on it and help you through it. You know, if you use a fee-based consultant or an outside consultant using either your Fast Grant money or other resources that you have, you're going to get a lot more attention in those 100 to 200 to 300 hours, and they're going to do a lot more for you. So I really want to emphasize that if you think you need a fee-based consultant, you really should talk to them because they can be really, really helpful. Next slide.
And Lou,
also, ahead,
I wanted to build on what you just said too. One of the things that I won't do for you is I won't write your application. I mean, that's something that I don't do. You know, fee-based consultants will, you know, pretty much do that for you. But what I will do is I'll review you and I'll, you know, review all of your drafts. But one of the things we don't do at PTAC is we don't write your application for you. And the other thing too, I wanted to bring up too, is the importance of the commercialization plan. Because a lot of times when people write their applications, they do a great job of writing their technical description of how their widget's going to, you know, change the universe. And then when they get to the commercialization piece, there's like 5 sentences. And, you know, I mean, the thing I often tell my clients is don't turn it in that way because you're automatically going to get declined. You know, you really need to have a good, well thought out commercialization piece. You know, but one of the big failures I see is they spend a lot of time writing the technical section and not, you know, spending time on the commercialization piece.
Thank you, Bob. I think we're at the end. I think we've got some questions potentially.
There's one question here. Yes. Does the government have a value on what needs to be invested into our business? Is there a spot we fill out that that they're looking for a certain amount? In other words, a down payment that's required, suggested for loans?
Not necessarily. There's no requirement that I know of that the government, as to give you an SBAR, is going to say you have to have invested a certain amount of money in this venture. Bob?
Yeah, no, there's nothing that I've seen in any application where, you know, the government wants to know the value that's invested. Mostly a narrative about, you know, how you're going to proceed with the development of your business should you get, you know, funding.
There's another question about our possible contracts with schools, something you would have in the application for the loan. Would you need to have that in there? Or, I mean, is it a good thing or not?
I'm not sure I totally understand that.
Yeah, I don't understand that either.
Are possible contracts with schools something you would have in the application for the loan?
Well, first of all, it's not a loan, it's a grant, right, or a contract.
Right.
But if it's a commercial opportunity and, you know, you're going to be selling to schools and that's going to be your target market, yeah, I think that would be important as part of your commercialization plan. I think if that's what they're asking.
And you would also, you want to get letters of support, you know, from those schools as part of your application, because some of the applications ask for letters of support. And then from the same person, they're asking if multiple businesses apply for, you know, funding. Is that a red flag?
I don't
The
know.
problem with that is if you have multiple businesses applying for funding, then you need multiple SAM registrations.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have 5 businesses that you control and all 5 are going to apply for an SBIR and STTR, then what you have to do is you have to have 5 SAM registrations. And I would probably not do that.
Yeah, and then, you know, on a very practical level, I mean, if you're submitting 5 different SBIR proposals simultaneously, that's really, I mean, that I recommend doing one at a time. It's hard enough to do one.
Yeah, you're gonna be spending a huge amount of time on each application. So you multiply that by 5.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions in the Q&A. Oh, one more. I recall SBIR grants expect full-time employees to be working on the grant. Startups mostly have the founders and 1099 contractors working on the company. Are there best practices to deal with this?
Lou, I can address
Go
that.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead, please.
All SBIR applications require a principal investigator, a PI, and each solicitation requires that PI work a certain amount of hours on a weekly basis, or, you know, as part of the application to qualify. And so you can have subcontracted employees and have one person that's working full time as the principal investigator. But you've got to read the solicitation to see what the requirements are in that solicitation for the amount of time that the individuals have to work on the grant. And particularly for STTRs, where you're involved with a university or a college or an institute of higher education, there's requirements for what you, the applicant, have to work on the grant and what the university or the other partner is going to be working, you know, in on the grant. So, you know, you can have subcontracted employees, but the other thing I'm going to tell you is that if you only have one person working, you're going to have to list in your application who your team is. And reviewers want to see a very strong team. I mean, they want to see you, you know, have people that are on your team that are going to be working with you. So I think that only having one person involved with the SBIR or the STTR kind of weakens your application.
Okay, thanks, Bob. We got one more question. Can this be used for real estate investor?
No.
That's a hard no.
That's a hard no.
Not. And it's for technology development, and it's for risky technology development. Sure. It's not even for just technology pure, and it's not even for engineering, strict engineering, right? It's for taking risky, innovative technologies to market.
So I'm just going to ask the question on that real estate. So even if it was technology based for real estate, improving MLS system or some kind of video technology, that sort of, it still would not apply.
I don't know. Go ahead, Bob.
You know, I would say, you know, the answer is more than likely no, because again, it depends. You know, I mean, the only place that I would see that you would be able to even, thank you, Sonia, even, apply would be under, National Science Foundation. But again, I would say the answer is no. I don't think that, I think you would be wasting your time, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I had a client, associate they were building an AI machine learning engine for lead generation for real estate leads. So they had a lot of it was in the AI space, and they were going to submit to NSF. I thought that was kind of on the edge. They haven't got an answer back yet.
Yeah, and I see another question. Is there a grant that would be available for real estate investing? Now, you got to understand, the government does not give you a grant to help you run your business or start your business. There's no grant money out there. So, again, I think the answer to that question is no.
think Kyle wanted to weigh in on that conversation about the real estate technology.
Go ahead, Kyle.
No, I was just saying that it had been answered, so that we were just cleaning up the Q&A box.
Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions. Any other comments from anybody?
One thing I did want to say for the people that are still on, if you need to, reach me, you can reach me through Arizona PTAC, AZPTAC, and you can .com, and you can go there to be registered as a client. We can only provide assistance to you once you become a client. Okay, so you go to AZ, and I'm going to get that in a slide. I haven't done that, but it's AZPTAC.com, and you would fill out the form that says request an appointment.
And the same goes for SBDC, but it's really, I mean, that the application registration process is very frictionless. It's a 3-minute exercise just to fill out the form.
Okay.
Jerry, I'm sorry, did you want to go over anything else regarding SBDC? No?
No, oops. No, and I guess I have now canceled the.
We're done.
We're done.
We're done.
Yes, I hit my mouse and it ended. It just ended the slide deck. So no, thank you, all of you, for the information. I think it was really, really well done. Good interaction too. Good questions. So thank you, everyone. This is being recorded. I would guess that's the only thing I would say, is it is being recorded, and the slides will also be sent out to everyone as a PDF. And the recording should be up on our website, the maricopa-sbdc.com website, in a couple of days. So thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks
Thanks, everybody. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care, and we'll see you later.
Okay.